Hey, this is Damon, the Midlife Man, and I just got back from Cuba yesterday. I have some tips if you're thinking of traveling to Cuba, and if you saw my last video and you're wondering how things went with traveling with my ex-wife and my kids, stay tuned. If you have not already subscribed to this channel, make sure you do that right now. And if you begin to like this video, which I'm sure you will as it goes on, and you keep watching it, please click like as well. What was it like traveling for an entire week in Cuba with my ex-wife and kids? It was wonderful. It was great. I was super happy to bring my kids out of the country. I've been wanting to do this for a while. They were right at the age where I think that they could appreciate. I'm not sure that they did, but I think they will in the long term. And also want to say thank you to my ex-wife for being so cool about this. She basically told me that I couldn't take the kids out of the country without her, which was one way of her saying she wanted to come along. Okay, I would not have enjoyed my vacation as much had I had to be a single parent on this vacation, if I had to be in charge of my kids all the time. So it was really helpful to have another parent there, and it was really helpful that we were very good to each other and very cool with each other and didn't push each other's buttons and start old fights. She didn't exactly like my last video. I showed it to her the night we were leaving to go to Cuba. She watched it and she thought it was a bit mean, and then I basically explained to her it was a playful thing and it wasn't mean-spirited, and she understood. So thank you, ex-wife, for being so cool. Is it okay to even go to Cuba for Americans, or are we allowed to go to Cuba? The answer is yes. For a long time, we were not, unless you were a journalist or it was a humanitarian mission. There were a few other loopholes. Now you are free to go to Cuba. Even the customs officer on my way out of Cuba asked me if I wanted her to stamp my passport, and I said yes. And the reason why they asked that is because it used to be if you came back with a passport that was stamped from Cuba, you could be fined some money or you could get into some sort of trouble. But I wanted that stamp because I wanted that on my passport. And when I got back to San Francisco and I went through customs there, the customs officer looked down at my passport and he said, "Oh, you went to Cuba?" And I said yes. And instead of telling me I shouldn't do that, or that I'm going to be fined, or that, you know, it wasn't okay for me to do that, he referenced The Godfather 2, and because part of it takes place in Cuba. It's totally cool. I know a lot of people who still think that it's not okay. It's okay. Go to Cuba if you want to go. Cuba has dual currency. Now, the tourists are given what they call kook, and the Cubans who live there, who are from Cuba, use pesos. What is the significance of this? The kook is inflated. It was actually inflated higher than the dollar when I was just there. One of the reasons for that is we were getting there just at the time that the high tourist season was just ending. The high tourist season is basically January 1st, New Year's. Lots of people will go to Cuba on New Year's, all the way through March 31st. We got there right at March 31st. And so we were down, it was still kind of high. When you go to a restaurant there, they give you a menu in kook, and I'm sure that locals would get a menu that was put in pesos and it would be much cheaper. Before you go to Cuba, you want to take out as much cash as you think you will spend. There are not ATMs on the street, and from what I hear, I didn't try this, but from what I hear, going to a Cuban bank and trying to get money from a US account is very difficult. So you want to take out as much cash as possible, and you have to be very careful because people will try to drain you there. They will try to overcharge you. You have to be careful what restaurants you go to, because we were way overspending and I was afraid I was going to run out of money, and if I ran out of money, I didn't know where I was going to get more money. So we had to be very careful towards the end of our stay in Havana. What you want to do is you want to find the places, say if it's a restaurant or a store, where they list the prices in pesos, not kook. If they list the prices in kook, it means it's a tourist place. They want to charge you more for things that should cost a lot less. And this brings me to my other tip that I want to give you. Don't spend all of your time in Havana. Havana is very cool. They have some very historical old buildings. Some of it's really run down. Some of it's pristine and cleaned up very well. All around, it's really, really nice. It's fun. Havana has so much energy. There's music on every corner. The culture is so rich and so intensified there. But don't spend all your time there. Get out of there. We went to the beach, and that was one of the best decisions we made because the beach is so stunningly beautiful there. And everything was not even just half price. It was like a third or a fourth of what everything cost in Havana. The food was so much cheaper. Souvenirs were so much cheaper. So get out of Havana. And if you want to buy souvenirs, get out of Havana and buy souvenirs outside of Havana. In general, Cuba is a very safe place. I didn't see anyone getting aggressive. From what I understand, you can pretty much walk anytime at night, man or woman, and there's just not any violence. I'm sure every once in a while it happens. There's always anomalies, but I didn't see anything really aggressive going on there. Some people were asking for money. If you tell them, hey, no, or back off, they usually do. They don't usually push or insist. I had a few instances that I'll get to in a moment where someone was being pushy. But in general, if you tell someone no, they usually take no for an answer and go away, especially if you insist or you say, I'd rather you go away or you're making me uncomfortable. They are not afraid or bashful or shy about asking for money. The average Cuban makes between $25 and $50 a month. Yes, they do get their basic needs taken care of, like education and healthcare, but most of them do live in poverty. So they see you, a person with money, and they will ask, or they will try to say, hey, I'll show you around all day. And, they're going to try to get as much money as possible. They're going to try to sell you overpriced cigars. Everything is up for bargain in Havana. And sometimes I would try to lowball people for things and they would just say no. And it was just that. It was just no. They weren't offended or anything. It was some things they knew they could sell to other tourists for more. Another thing you might encounter when you're there is prostitution. Prostitution is illegal in Cuba. It was legal before the revolution. It's legal after the revolution. Pimping and I think brothels are illegal, but if you're a man and you're not with your kids or your wife, or you are single, be prepared to be approached by both men and women for sex. And they are, again, not shy about this. It is probably more accepted in their culture than it is in well, I know it's more accepted in their culture than it is in the US. And it even got really weird when I took my family to the beach. There was a guy who was hanging out with us who was being a little too imposing. He was being a little too happy and a little too enthusiastic about saying he was my friend for life, and I just really started to get skeptical of the guy. He ran out and got us some beers, brought it back to the beach. We bought him a beer. Everything was okay, but then I started to feel uncomfortable, and he brought a friend, and she was this very young, very pretty woman. As soon as my ex-wife was out of earshot, he tried to sell her to me for sex, and it was one of those moments. I had one of these moments in Thailand when I was getting a massage. I don't want to judge. Cultures are different wherever you go. I don't want to get on my moral high horse or anything like that. And actually, to tell you the truth, if a woman is not being pressured and it's not a sex slave trade kind of thing, and she's complicit and it's voluntary, it's her choice, she wants to do it, hey, it's her body, I actually am okay with that. I'm okay with it on the level of it being legal. Not okay on the level of like one of my family members doing that, but hey, everybody's different. So, and every culture is different. So I wouldn't want to judge that way. And she seemed quite complicit, but it made me uncomfortable. And he started to push and insist. And eventually I got to the point where I told him, I said, you're making me uncomfortable. Stop asking me. And I'd like you to go away. And he did. That was the only time that somebody got really pushy and made me feel uncomfortable. I went walking the streets of Havana at night without my kids and my ex-wife, and I got approached several times by men and women for sex. And here's the thing, if you're single and you're a guy and you're going out and you're looking to pick up women in Cuba, chances are the woman might actually really like you, but she might also expect you to pay her, is from what I gathered there, because it's just so accepted in the culture. And if you have more money and she has a lot less money, it's, even if she likes you and she's attracted to you, she's probably thinking, hey, this is an opportunity for me to get a little extra money. And last but not least, cigars. Can you bring cigars back from Cuba? Yes, you can. You can bring 100 cigars per person for personal use only. This is actually something I found out when I was in customs coming back into the US. They said that I could bring back cigars, and I said, oh, good, because I have some. And he said, as long as it's 100 cigars or fewer, and it's for personal use, which was no problem. I only bought 25, and I smoked several when I was in Cuba. So you can bring 100 per person. And he even looked at my kids, and he was kind of like, so I could have bought 400 cigars. I could have bought 100 cigars per person I was with, even though they were my kids, and they would have let that go. So if you want to bring cigars back from Cuba, 100 per person, personal use only. I hope you've enjoyed those tips for going to Cuba. If you're considering a trip to Cuba, I say absolutely do it. Going in April or May is probably a good time because it's not sweltering hot, or maybe even the fall would probably be a good time to go because it's not so hot and it's not high tourist season. Oh, and one last thing. The internet sucks in Cuba. It's very limited and you have to pay $1 an hour. So if you think you're going to be on the internet as much as you are in the US when you get to Cuba, it's not going to happen. That's kind of a good thing. It was a bad thing for me because I have 2 YouTube channels and I wasn't able to upload, but it was pretty cool that I was able to unplug like that. It felt actually pretty good. I hope you enjoyed those tips. If you like this video, please click like right down here. And remember to subscribe to this channel. More videos are coming. Videos from Cuba are coming. I haven't even begun to edit those yet. So if you want to see the videos of me actually being there and vlogging, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell so you'll be notified when those videos are coming out.